Hey everyone, welcome to another video. In this video, we'll discuss all about the criteria in obtaining a GST registration. Well, if you are a person or an entity or an organization and you are exclusively involved in the supply of goods, then if your aggregate turnover in a financial year is more than 40 lakhs of rupees, you need to get a GST registration done. On the other hand, if you are exclusively involved in the supply of services, and if your aggregate turnover in a financial year crosses 20 lakhs rupees, then you need to get yourself GST registered. But what if you're involved in both supply of goods and supply of services? Then in that case, they say that the moment you cross 20 lakhs of aggregate turnover in a financial year, you need to get a GST registration. Well, having understood the basic criteria for obtaining a GST registration, a major element in it is aggregate turnover. Now, what is aggregate turnover? To understand this concept, let's take the help of an example. Let's say you as a person or an entity or your business is into a sale of books from which you get a turnover of 10 lakhs, sale of pens from which you get a turnover of 9 lakhs in a year, and you're also involved in the supply of transportation services from which you get a yearly turnover of 2 lakhs. Now you add all this and you will observe that you will get a total turnover of 21 lakhs of rupees, which is obviously crossing the 20 lakh limit because you're involved in both the supply of goods and supply of services, and therefore you need to obtain a GST registration. So for the purpose of computing aggregate turnover, you'll have to add up the turnover from all your businesses, whether you are in the supply of books, pens, or in the supply of transportation services. Now, coming to this particular example, sale of books does not attract any GST. Sale of pens attract GST. Sale of transportation services or supply of transportation services, of course, attracts GST. Irrespective of the fact whether your one type of business attracts GST or not, for the purpose of computing aggregate turnover, as I said, you need to add up the turnover from all your businesses, whether it is taxable, non-taxable, nil, exempted, exported, whatever, and then arrive at the total figure and then compare with the threshold limit whether you're up or down to get a GST registration done. So in this case, even though you are in the supply of books which does not attract GST, still for the purpose of computing aggregate turnover, you'll have to add up the turnover from book sale also and then see whether you are liable to get a GST registration or not. Well, one of the common questions that is often asked relating to GST registration is the fact that I have a business, I have multiple branches in the same state or different state, whether I should get one registration or multiple registrations. I have multiple businesses spread in the same state or different state, whether I should get different GST registrations. Well, let's try to address all these questions in three cases. One, if you have only one type of business but have multiple branches in the same state, one type of business, multiple branches in the same state, then you need to only obtain one GST registration for that particular main business and then add up all your branches to the same registration. Let's say, for example, you have a business in Karnataka for which you have opened up 100 branches in the same state. Then you need to only obtain one GST registration for that one particular business that you have in Karnataka. The second case is the fact that you have one business but you have multiple branches in multiple states. In this case, you need to obtain different GST registration numbers. For example, you have, let's say, one business in Karnataka for which you have a branch in Karnataka and you have a branch in Kerala. Now, in this case, you need to obtain two different GST registrations, one for your business and branch in Karnataka and two for your branch in Kerala. In the third case, you could have multiple businesses either in the same state or in different states. Then in that case also, obviously, you need to obtain different GST registrations or different GST numbers. Let's say you have a footwear business in Karnataka and you have a transportation service business also in the same state, then you need to obtain two different GST registration numbers. If you have a footwear business in Karnataka and you have some other business in Kerala, then obviously you need to obtain two different registrations. So in short, for summary, the moment you have an office or a branch in a different state, you need to obtain a different GST registration or different GST registration number. And the moment you have a multiple business, either in the same state or in a different state, you need to obtain different GST registration numbers. Well, coming to the topic of compulsory GST registration. Well, in this case, there are some situations in which, irrespective of your turnover limit, that is, whether you cross the 20 lakh limit or the 40 lakh limit, or if you're below that, there are some situations in which you need to obtain a compulsory GST registration. First one is the fact that if you are involved in any interstate supply, whether you are supplying goods or services online or offline from one state to another state, you need to obtain a GST registration. If you are an e-commerce operator, then of course you need to obtain a GST registration. If you are a supplier supplying through this e-commerce operator, you need to obtain one. If you are an agent for your principal or you're acting like a middleman for two different people, you need to obtain a GST registration. So these are the common situations or the important situations in which, irrespective of the fact that you cross or do not cross the 40 lakh, 20 lakh limit, you need to obtain you need to get a mandatory GST registration number. Well, what is the procedure? It is quite simple, straightforward, because these days everything is online. Let's say 1st of May you start your business which is into providing transportation, which is into providing any kind of service. By 20th of August, you have crossed the 20 lakh limit, that is, you've now earned a turnover of 22 lakhs. What they say is that within a period of 30 days, that is from 20th of August plus within 30 days, you need to apply for a GST registration through a form called REG01. File that online along with supporting documents, and you should be getting your GST registration or your number in less than 7 days. So what they say is that the moment you become liable, or the day where you cross the 20 lakh limit, which in this case is 20th of August, then from that day, within 30 days, you need to get yourself or need to apply for a GST registration, then wait for the certificate to be issued by the GST authorities. Well, in my opinion, even if your turnover is not hitting the 20 lakh, 40 lakh limit in a year, or you are not falling under those categories where you have to obtain a compulsory GST registration, the advice would be to still go for a voluntary GST registration, because these days, getting a business from your vendor or your customer without a GST registration has become difficult. Even for you to register online, to apply for online tenders, the major question that is asked there is, do you have a GST registration? So it is always good, it is always recommended that you obtain a voluntary GST registration, that you apply for a GST registration number. But the downside of getting a voluntary GST registration done, or in general a GST registration done, is the fact that you need to file multiple returns. Now, if you're a monthly filer, you need to file close to around 24 returns plus annual return and all that. If you're a quarterly return filer that is below a certain threshold limit, then you need to file 4 GST returns but make payments for all 12 months of GST through online challans. Well, this is the first drawback of obtaining a GST registration, the fact that you need to file so many returns for every GST number, and you can imagine that if you have branches spread all across 29 states, then how many GST returns in a particular financial year you would have to file. Well, I hope I was able to make things clear through this particular video. If you like the video, please do show your support to us by hitting the like button. If you want more videos like these on a regular basis, then you could also hit on the subscribe button. Till then, I'll see you guys in the next video. Take care and thank you.